So this is going to be a video on one of the arguments on the frivolous tax page on the irs.gov website. And I want to be clear that everything on this website is propaganda. I haven't run across a single claim on their frivolous claims page that's actually legit. But for today, I want to focus on the 14th Amendment claim, which is the taxpayer is not a citizen of the United States and thus is not subject to the federal income tax laws. Now, they are claiming that this is actually a frivolous claim, that is not a true statement. And so I want to go through what their defense of this is, and then we're going to talk about what the actual law is and what the actual Constitution says. So the first thing, it says some individuals argue that they have rejected citizenship in the United States in favor of state citizenship. Therefore, they are relieved of their federal income tax obligations. A variation of this argument is that a person is a free-born citizen of a particular state and thus was never a citizen of the United States. The underlying theme of these arguments is the same. The person is not a United States citizen and is not subject to federal tax laws because only United States citizens are subject to these laws. So here's their initial claim is that we are not able to claim that we're citizens of a state, that we are only federal citizens. Now, the problem that you have with this claim, and I apologize, my dog's back here in the back wanting to talk. But the problem with this claim is that if you were to assume that they were correct, that nobody is a freeborn citizen of a state, that everybody is a federal citizen, then you would have to ask, why do we have state governments? Why do we have state constitutions? Why do we have state laws? Because this would mean that the federal government is controlling everyone. There are only federal laws, and that's just not true. And it's easily disproven just by looking outside at the fact that the states, somewhat run themselves. But they go on. So it says the law. It says the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution defines the basis for United States citizenship, stating that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. The 14th Amendment therefore establishes simultaneous state and federal citizenship, claims that individuals are not citizens of the United States but are solely citizens of a sovereign state and not subject to federal taxation, have been uniformly rejected by the courts. The IRS has warned taxpayers of the consequences of making this frivolous argument. Now, and then it says, in variation of this argument, the taxpayers argue that although they are citizens of the United States for the purposes of the Internal Revenue Code, they are not resident aliens and are subject to taxation only on income that is connected with the conduct of a trade or business. The 11th Circuit rejected this contention as frivolous. Now, before I go into the 14th Amendment argument, I want to go through a couple of these cases. But here's the thing. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then they give some other 12, or they actually give a bunch of other cases. But we should assume, I would think, that the number one case up here should be the first one. It should be the one that just nails this thing in the coffin and puts this argument to bed. Here's the problem. I can present you, and I will in this video, many Supreme Court cases where they discuss 14th Amendment citizenship and the fact that a state citizen does not have to be a United States citizen. I can give you many of them that go into depth as to the fact that this is the case, that this 14th Amendment citizenship thing is a frivolous argument, that you can't just automatically assume someone is a United States citizen by the definitions of the code, the fact that the United States is the District of Columbia. So you would think that they would have an articulate argument in the contrary, proving that we are all 14th Amendment citizens. But they don't. Every single one of these cases, and I'm not going to go through all of them because they're all the same thing, is you have a judge, an activist judge, and I say he's an activist judge because he did not actually do any research on this citizenship thing. He just declared that something was frivolous. That is literally what every single one of these cases deems to be a fact. It's just frivolous. There's no argument made to prove that it is frivolous. They just declare it frivolous, and therefore it is. Now, I also want to point out that if you actually went and looked up every single one of these cases and read the cases, which I have, hardly any of them, in fact, I think only one of them actually raises the issue of state citizenship, but it was done so in appeal, and it was done so for a defendant that was actually filling out income tax forms and playing games in the system. So the whole point to this is that if you are a 14th Amendment citizen, you have no rights, you have no constitution other than the 14th Amendment, and the federal government would literally be in charge of the entire country. There would be no constitutional arguments taken before any court, and no state courts would have any jurisdiction to be able to operate on anyone. So just by the nature of what we're talking about, it is not a good argument. It is a frivolous argument to even make this claim. Now, why am I making this claim? Well, let's take a look at a few things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually go up here, and we're going to go and this is in my Obsidian, and all this stuff is online for anyone that wants to look at it. I want to go in here to, not the Constitution, let's go to the Bill of Rights and take a look at the 14th Amendment. So it says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States, let me make sure this is showing up on there for y'all. So all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Now here's a problem. All persons born or naturalized. So the first question is born. Was Glenn Hancock born in the United States? So the first question is what are we talking about the United States? Could it be all 50 states? There's a problem. If it's all 50 states, which you could make an argument for, all persons born or naturalized in the United States, if it was the whole country, then this part right here, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, would be invalid. It would be an impossible representation of what is happening. And the reason is because there is no single jurisdiction that exists in the whole country. The federal jurisdiction is over the District of Columbia. The state jurisdiction is over Georgia or over Alabama or Florida or California. And so each state is sovereign in and of itself, so it has jurisdiction over its boundaries, and the federal government has jurisdiction over its boundaries. So we have to back up and ask first, why is the 14th Amendment, why does it exist? And the reason that it exists is because the slaves got freed by the 13th Amendment, but the states would not allow them to be citizens of the states, because at the time that's all there was citizens of states. And so because that was the case, the federal government stepped in and formed the 14th Amendment. Now, I'd argue the 14th Amendment is not even a valid amendment, but we won't go there. We'll just say that it's good. The problem that you have is that the citizens that this made could only have been made for the District of Columbia, because the federal government does not have the ability to dictate what a state is going to do. And so they literally created a second type of citizen that only exists inside the District of Columbia. Now, I would also argue that the 14th Amendment, if you're going to actually go back and have a legal discussion, the 14th Amendment did not actually provide citizenship at all for any of the slaves unless they were born in the District of Columbia or they naturalized there, which would require an act of going through a naturalization process in order to become a United States citizen. Now, a lot of the slaves may have done that. I don't know. I don't think they did, but maybe they did. We'll just assume that they did. But the point is that in order to be a citizen of the United States, understanding that the United States is the District of Columbia because it's the only thing that you could make the claim, the simultaneous claim of being born somewhere and being under the jurisdiction of it and it having the name the United States. So the District of Columbia is the only thing that fits all three of those bills. So the 14th Amendment is actually set up for the slaves. So the other part of this is you'll notice here that this has a lowercase citizens. So it's everywhere in the Constitution, citizen is capitalized. And the reason is because the citizens are the ones that form this Constitution. So they're the proper noun of that conversation, that document. But in this case, it's a lowercase citizen because this citizen is actually a creation of the federal government. Therefore, the federal government regulates it. It has total control over it. And so right here, you see, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Now, here's the thing. It's a little weird if you think about it, why the 14th Amendment relists things that you already had as citizens of the country in the Bill of Rights. So you had the first 8 amendments that were actually protecting our rights. We had freedom of speech, freedom to carry a gun, all that stuff. So why did they relist some of these? Not all of them. You'll notice freedom of speech is not in here. But why did they restate things that we already had the rights to if they were citizens of the country? And the reason is because and there's Supreme Court cases that actually explain all of this, but there was no way for the federal government to pass a constitutional amendment that actually applied to all of the states retroactively. That would be illegal. And so their only option would have been to reject or repeal all of the first 8 amendments and make this the only constitutional amendment that we have, which they obviously would have a really difficult time trying to do, or put it in here and try to make it sound like it did something that it really didn't do. So the 14th Amendment as an argument is completely and absolutely propaganda. You cannot, like, I was born in the state of Georgia. Therefore, I was not born in a federal district. So the only way that I could become a citizen of the United States is for me to go through a naturalization process to become where I swear allegiance to the federal government. That's the only way that I could become a citizen of the United States. I have never done that. Now, if they did something with my birth certificate and they filed some erroneous document stating that that's the case, that's a whole nother discussion, and it has never been produced. So I'm going to take the position that that was never done. What is happening, and it's easily proven, if you go look at the 1040 form or go look at any of the forms, you will very quickly realize that by filling out any of those forms, you are actually declaring yourself a United States citizen or a citizen of the District of Columbia. And because of that, you're giving them control over your life. You're giving them control over everything that you're doing. And so if you declare that you have now realized that you're not a citizen of the District of Columbia, and you most definitely are not operating within a trade or a business, then they have no ability to tax you. And them declaring that that is a frivolous argument is just as frivolous as the declaration itself. So I want to go, what we're going to do is I want to go back up here to, we're going to get out of court cases. Now, I do want to point something out. If I go to court cases and I go to let's see, go to the United States, for example. Actually, citizenship would be a good one. If you go through here, you'll notice there are many Supreme Court cases that are all declaring there's a distinction between citizenship of the United States and citizenship of a particular state, and a person may be the former without being the latter. So there are just hundreds of Supreme Court cases where they go through and have that discussion, an in-depth discussion. You will not find a single court case, and I argue that if it existed, it ought to have been the first Supreme Court case on their page. And just to go back to their website for just a moment, let's go back over here. If you go back to their website for just a moment and you look at the first case that they brought up, which is this Taliaferro, and we come back over here to Obsidian and we go to court cases, and let's go to taxes and then defense of taxes. This is their stuff. Actually, it looks like I might have put it in a different section. Or no, there it is. So let's go 14th Amendment citizenship and United States. Where is... I may not have put that one in here because it had nothing to do with the tax stuff. Well, let's just go look it up. So we're going to go back over here. God dang it. We're going to go back over here and we're going to grab this guy. Oh, I think that might be why I didn't have it in there, but we'll look. And let's go. I'm going to pull this down a little bit here, so I'll get to my tabs. All right, so this is again, this is the first court case they put on there, so you would think it would be the most powerful one out of all of them. And so this is issuing notice of levy and directing it to the return monies already seized as a result of notice. The district court dismissed the failure to state a claim and lack of subject matter jurisdiction. On appeal, he argues he is not a taxpayer and is not subject to federal taxation because the 16th Amendment authorizes the imposition of excise taxes but not income taxes. Congress has taxing authority over federal enclaves. IRS levies may be served only to collect taxes owed by federal employees, and although he is a United States citizen for the purpose of the tax code, he is not a resident alien. So, see, this case has the guy arguing that he is a United States citizen. So he didn't understand what they were talking about, United States citizen, because again, it is natural for all of us to believe that we are citizens of the United States because we all believe the United States represents the whole country, not the District of Columbia. But what you have to understand is that by the tax code definitions themselves, it is only the District of Columbia. They never define the United States as the entire country. Not anywhere in the federal codes do they do that. And so there's a difference between what you believe is being said and what is actually being said in the codes. And that is the argument. And so this guy claiming that he's a United States citizen he already has screwed himself because he didn't take the proper course. He didn't say, by your definition, I am not a United States citizen. I am a citizen of the United States of America, but I am not a citizen based on the definitions you've provided in the tax code. All right. And so it says, for the purpose of the tax code, he is not a resident alien who is subject to taxation only on income that is connected with the conduct. And so this is his argument. And he also goes into his Fifth Amendment due process rights and all that kind of stuff. And it says we review the subject matter jurisdiction, and they denied it. And then you'll look. In fact, let me just speed this up. I'm going to look for frivolous. So here is the word. So third, we previously rejected as frivolous Mr. Talaferro's argument that the federal income tax only applies to federal employees. So literally, they just rejected it as frivolous. They have no discussion about it whatsoever. They don't get into any details whatsoever as to what is frivolous. They just declare that it is frivolous. And so right here, you'll see fourth, Mr. Talaferro admits to being a United States citizen, and he is not a non-resident alien for the purpose of the tax code. So again, the guy arguing in this case did not take the position that we're taking. He took the position that he is a United States citizen. My position is I absolutely, based on the definitions provided in the statutes, I am not a United States citizen. Am I a citizen of the United States of America? Absolutely. Am I a citizen of Georgia? Absolutely. But I am not a citizen based on the definitions provided in the statutes, a United States citizen in that respect, because they define it as the District of Columbia. So let's go back over here for a second, because I want to end this thing on the actual code section. So let's take a look at income tax, and let's take a look right here really quick for the W forms. These are all of the forms that they make you fill out. Every single one of these forms, whether you think it or not, every one of them have you admitting by filling out the form that you're a United States citizen. Every single one of them. And so by you filling out a 1040 or a W-2 or a W-4, you are admitting that you are a United States citizen simply by filling out that form. So let's look at what an employee is. So an employee, the term employee includes every individual performing services if the relationship between him and the person for whom he performs such services is the legal relationship of an employer and an employee. Okay. And then it says it includes officers and employees, whether elected or appointed, of the United States, a state, territory, It is interesting that the term includes, and it includes these things, and they're all District of Columbia things. They're not actually the whole country. But let's look at employer. An employer, the term employer embraces not only individuals and organizations engaged in a trade or business, but organizations exempt from income tax, such as religious and charitable organizations, educational. And so, but this trade or business is a very interesting thing. Let's take a look at a trade or business. Now I have that down here in this withholding agent section, trade or business. Trade or business. The term trade or business includes the performance of the functions of a public office. So, unless you are performing in the functions of a public office, you're not operating a trade or business. I mean, here's the thing, and this is what is just really difficult. If they wanted trade or business to be what trade or business is, then why did they provide a definition for it? And why does the definition state clearly that it is for the functions of a public office? It doesn't say anything else. And I want to address the elephant in the room. The word includes. This is something that we should all actually exercise a little thought process in. Try to think of something that you use the word includes that is not exclusionary. And I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that for the purposes of this discussion, fruit includes bananas, strawberries, and apples. Now, my question is does it also include grapes? Because I did not say that it included grapes. If I wanted fruit to include fruit, I would not even have defined a definition for it. I wouldn't have provided anything. But what I have done is I've told you that when I use the word fruits within the context of what we're discussing, it includes bananas, strawberries, and grapes. So you can't just automatically go throw green beans into the conversation or throw, some other fruit into the coconut into the conversation, because I've specifically listed the things that it includes. And so when they come in here and they say the term trade or business includes the performance of the functions of a public office, that's the only thing it includes. You can't, the IRS loves to come in and try to argue. And even the Supreme Court, which, I mean, to be honest with you, probably half of the judges that are Supreme Court justices are not really that bright. But they have tried to argue that the word includes things. It adds things to an existing body of objects. But the problem is they've never provided that body. Now, if I said the word fruit includes strawberries and bananas, or if I said fruit, I've been trying to think of an example of where it actually adds to a list, but I just can't, I can't come up with it, because if you said fruit, if for the purpose of this conversation, fruit includes fruit, including bananas and strawberry. Well, I mean, that's kind of redundant, because I said fruit includes fruit. It's all fruit. So why would I list specific things? Because by listing something, I have excluded everything not in that list. And it's that way for every example that I've been able to come up with. I've even had other people trying to think of examples of where you would use the word includes and actually be adding something to another list. So the point is that none of us operate a trade or business, and by filling out a form where you're saying that you operate a trade or business, I would argue is actually a fraud. You're actually creating a case of perjury against yourself, because you're claiming that you're operating a trade or business when it's physically impossible to be doing so. And so this entire argument, and if you go to constitutionalcounty.us and look at the top paragraph there, I've got a link to my Obsidian notes. You can go in and look at all these court cases, all the code sections, and all of the things that I've got listed in here. If you go in and actually review the code, you're not going to find a single example of where they actually say what you think they're saying. I'm going to give you one final example just to kind of drill this thing home. Let's go back up here. I'm going to get out of here, and we're going to go down here to the definition of the United States. So here is the definition of the United States. It says the term United States, when used in a geographical sense, includes only the states and the District of Columbia. Now, you would, on first observation, you would assume that the word states is representing Georgia, Alabama, Texas, all those states, right? But here's the problem. They define right under it the definition of state. So let's look at the definition of state, and it says the state shall be construed to include the District of Columbia where it's necessary to carry out the provision of this title. They didn't say the several states of the Union. They said the term state shall be construed to include the District of Columbia. Let's go back to the United States. Let's remove this word states with the definition of state. The term United States, when used in a geographical sense, includes only the District of Columbia and the District of Columbia. That is literally their definition of the United States with respect to Title 26, which is the Income Tax Code. There are no other definitions of the United States except for that. And so if you're going to go back to this 14th Amendment argument as being frivolous, you have a whole lot of stuff to try to explain to defend that position. So I'm arguing that the frivolous tax page on the irs.gov website is in and of itself a frivolous argument in its entirety. And I would argue that it is a perfect example of treason with respect to our country, the United States of America, and all of the several states that make it up. because they are trying to overturn our Constitution and our protections and use them against us through this 14th Amendment argument, which is on its face a frivolous argument.